Okay, right.
Thank you.
We've got quite a lot of time for questions. If anybody's got a question, stick your hand up. Please tell us who you are, where you're from, and if you want to direct a question at somebody in particular, please let me know. There's a couple of roving mics, so don't be shy and put your hand up. Okay, one down the front here.
Michael Pemberton, Trafalgar Marine Technology Limited. Is there now a case to be made for putting a large island floating structure in the middle of a wind farm so that the servicing elements that are ongoing on that farm can be more effectively carried out instead of running these expensive high-burning diesels with men's time backwards and forwards out of Grimsby or whatever other ports to get to and from the wing, to do the servicing on the towers.
Okay, maybe direct that one at Sean. You want to take that one on?
I can give it a shot. I know right now for round 3 there are a number of different technologies or methods being investigated. Some are accommodation platforms offshore, some are surface operation vessels, as I had up on the slide, some are mothership concepts and flotels. So there are a number of different ideas that are being thrown about. The challenge really is not the living offshore, but the access to individual turbines once you're there. So you could live at an offshore station in high seas, but traveling from that station to the wind turbine is going to be challenging still.
Some years ago, I put a patent application in for a large cruciform structure with 4 wind turbines and the current turbine in it, the whole caboose. But I forgot about it. It was too big to be built by anybody. But it would have served that kind of service, providing shelter for vessels, servicing facilities for machines, and also generating power from the tides which flow up and down the North Sea.
Yep. Okay. Okay, yeah, it's a good point. I think there are 1 or 2 precedents in oil and gas of artificial islands and satellite islands forming hubs for offshore operations, but I don't think anybody's really proposed that yet in the North Sea, so it's maybe a... Well, okay, we'll go in and patent that one quickly. Okay. Any more questions? Oh, one over here. We can all have a think about a question while we're getting this one asked.
Hello, Nigel Robinson from D&V GL. It's another question for Sean. Could you elaborate on how your approach differs from a written scheme of examination approach? I get the feeling you're talking about something beyond that sort of classical model.
Sorry, could you say it again? I didn't hear the middle part of your question.
Yeah, sorry. I'm not used to this microphone. How does your approach compare to a written scheme of examination, the approach based on risk of integrity risk and developing a work program on a cyclical basis?
I don't know at this point that I can answer that. It's too early in our process. You know, one of the things we talked about early on is you could develop the best dynamic model in the world that would deliver you efficiently everywhere, but you have to overlay that quite quickly with a health and safety and a risk mitigation plan where it instantly filters out everything that's not possible based on your risk strategy. So we understand that that's a requirement and assume that we'll get to the point where that's a filtering process for the data that comes in. But I can't give you a good answer at this point. We're too early in the process.
Fair enough.
Okay, thanks. Oh, yeah, and Mark's going to comment on that one.
I just wanted to comment on that because what we see is that from all the G9 members is that we have in many cases we have many examples of low level of quality of technical integrity and safety integrity out in the sharp end. So we have a number of issues, a number of examples on that, and I think that it is very important to push towards a development where we have much safer, robuster, and better design out in the sharp end. For instance, just one example, we discovered that the hatches to open to escape, they are quite complicated to open, and you can all think of a situation where you are stressed, it's an emergency, and you need to open these hatches quickly, and they are actually quite complicated to open, and some of them took several minutes, and some of them we couldn't open at all. So this is something that we are addressing, and we are constantly pulling together these examples and challenging the suppliers, and I think that is something that we will use also when we plan the Safe by Design workshops.
Yeah, there's a good history, and if you go back to Apollo 1 and the hatch incident there's plenty of safety moments been delivered over the years about safety hatches, so one to watch out for. Okay, any more questions? Oh, back up there.
Martin Brown, DNVGL. In the oil and gas industry, when we design many of our structures, we didn't put a lot of thought into how they would be removed, and actually removal of them is potentially quite hazardous. I'm just curious as to whether the structures we're putting in today, we are thinking carefully about how we can safely remove them.
Anybody want to take that one on? Okay, I'll answer that one myself. Yes, the decommissioning are exactly now the same for renewables as they are for oil and gas. So anything that's been installed since, I think, March 1998 has to be designed for removal. So you have to, as part of the consenting process, you have to develop a decommissioning plan for your offshore wind farm. You have to have thought about how you're going to decommission it, the environmental consequences in that, and how you're actually going to do it safely. I've seen some of the plans, they're quite variable, but in principle, the jackets have been looked at in terms of how you can get them out again. I think not so much thought at the moment's been given to taking turbines down. There have been 1 or 2 turbines taken down and put back up again where there have been problems. And it's not easy, and it's something we need to do probably more on in the future to make that a safer operation. But there has been some thought going into how we decommission these structures, which is a good step forward.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Oh, yeah. Up there.
Hello, I'm Carolyn Campbell. I'm from BIS. For Neil, on the Sparta programme, I was just wondering if it's envisaged that the data might also be shared not just with the developers, but or the asset owners, but with also their suppliers. So, for example, the turbine manufacturers, the providers of other components, or is that posing risks in terms of commercial confidentiality that you mentioned?
It's certainly something we've considered, and in terms of the model going forwards through to operation next year onwards, it's certainly an aspect we're already considering with the steering group. With regards to anything specific in the supply chain, I think the intention is for the owner-operators themselves to use Sparta to highlight areas that they want to then develop in their supply chain down to SME and challenge the innovation that way. So that's certainly one aspect in terms of how the supply chain will see outputs from Sparta. The other aspect we are considering is almost more along the lines of some commercial aspects in terms of third parties, in terms of academia, finance institutions and so on, being able to access data. If we do go down that line, it would only be on the top level sector basis. You obviously wouldn't see any of the individual wind farms to assess against, because that's obviously how the owner-operators will benchmark themselves. So it is something we are considering, and it's something we'll try to get our heads around, really, in terms of what level of data can we make available in some way to external parties for use and learning and sharing out there as well. So yes, it is being considered.
I'm interested to hear Sean's thoughts on this, because obviously one of the outputs would be very useful to the inputs of the kind of maintenance models that you guys are looking at. So has there any thought been given about how we could make that interface work?
We've given quite a bit of thought about how to incorporate SCADA data into the dynamic model, because you can imagine that SCADA data that's interpreted in the right way could give you essentially condition monitoring, so you could predict ahead of time when something's going to need repaired and then have it when you need it rather than have it after you need it. So we have thought about it. It's challenging, and in order to make it work for Sea Energy, it's going to require access to some very good data to test it and validate it.
I think that's where I was almost hinting at, is if there's good data being developed, can it be anonymized in such a way that the supply chain can use it to develop better modeling tools and better offerings to the market in terms of how we get better productivity?
Yeah, we would very much like that, because one of the challenges associated with lots of data streams on the model is access to those bits of data. And as we all know, some of them are very confidential.
Yeah.
So the more things like Sparta, the more beneficial it is for the entire supply chain to, as you say, innovate around that.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else comment on that? No? Okay, any more questions? Time for a couple more. You've all heard there's whiskey on service through there. Okay, if that's it, I think we'll just call it a day. Thank you very much for your participation, and can I ask you to thank the panelists once again.